Everyone, back to the more YouTube channel. It's Chris back with the aftermath. This is the show we do when the dust has settled from the instant post-match reaction that Mark and I did last night to Newcastle United throwing away a lead to lose 2-1 in the Velodrome against Marseille in the Champions League. A few things to talk about. I've slept on it. I've consumed some content from my favourite content creators, and I'm still very much of the same mindset that things need to change. There's a deeper line problem here as well about mentality, which I'll come to in a minute. But the headline story from this game, and the big thing I want to talk about, is Nick Pope. Now, this isn't an isolated incident from Nick Pope. Nick Pope has been making error after error for the past 7 or 8 weeks, right? And yeah, he makes the odd good save here and there, but invariably as a goalkeeper, he is not a modern day goalkeeper. Nick Pope would have been classed in the 90s, you know, in terms of a goalkeeper. He would have been England's #1 and one of the best goalkeepers in the league, up alongside Seaman and Schmeichel. But that's not the way football is anymore. What's happening with Nick Pope reminds me of what happened with Joe Hart at Manchester City. But the difference between Eddie Howe and Pep Guardiola is that Pep Guardiola was ruthless enough, and it seemed ruthless at the time, to make that call early and say, Joe Hart's a good shot stopper, he's a good goalkeeper, but he's not my goalkeeper. I want my goalkeeper to be expansive, progressive, to encourage his defence, to give him the ball and to play with the ball. And that's exactly what Guardiola did, and that unlocked Manchester City to play football in the way they've played for years and win titles and everything else as well. That's the big problem and the big dilemma that faces Eddie Howe right now. We all know there was a plan to replace Nick Pope. That's why we chased James Trafford for nigh on 2 years and then lost out to Manchester City. And yes, you can say it was a contract anomaly, if you will, that the Trafford didn't come to Newcastle. He probably regrets it now because he went and signed Donnarumma. That's what big clubs like Manchester City do. If a world-class goalkeeper is available for 25 million quid, they'll go sign him. And then guess what? The 40 million quid they've spent on a young goalkeeper to come in is not going to get a sniff. That's what happens in football. But we know the plan to succeed against Pope was there. So we couldn't get Trafford. Okay, we get it. We'll lick our wounds and move on. We go and get Aaron Ramsdale for a 4 million quid loan fee. This is a goalkeeper that Eddie Howe has known for a long time. He's had him when he's a young kid. He knows what he's all about, but he won't play him in a game like that last night against Marseille, where realistically the pressure was off Newcastle. It was all on Marseille to get a result, and they stepped up and they did that, but Newcastle just opened the door and let them come straight in to do it, really. It was a weak mentality performance from Newcastle United, but it was you know, orchestrated by the moment of fucking madness by Nick Pope. And this isn't the first time that he's done that. Watching a goalkeeper who lacks pace and lacks composure when he's coming off of his line charge out of his box so far out when he's got 3 men around him, and one of his centre-backs, by the way, is lightning quick and already saved our arse against Aubameyang earlier on in the game. Malik Chow has got that sorted. If you go back and watch that goal again, Malik Chow was actually telling this tit to get back on his line, and he's ignored him and he's come flying out. And then to completely miss, you know, Aubameyang, he flew past him like fucking Wile E. Coyote chasing a roadrunner. He just needed that sign in his hand saying help before he splattered off the wall. That would have completed the whole picture. But he's screaming at Aubameyang. It was embarrassing. It was fucking amateur football. It was the kind of thing you'd see in the FA Cup against a Premier League team against a non-league side. It was pathetic. And the time has come now. Eddie Howe cannot ignore this anymore, but he will. I'll get into his comments after the game in a minute, which is worrying. He has to drop Nick Pope. He has to take him out of this team. Now, there's the age-old saying, I remember from the Batman movie, I'm pretty sure that it was somebody more philosophical than the Batman movies that said this, but you either die a hero or you live long enough to see yourself become the villain. And that's what's happening with Nick Pope. And the biggest problem for this, the biggest perpetuator of this, is Eddie Howe and his over-loyalty to players. Eddie Howe always thinks about what players have done in the past, not what they can do in the here and now, in the present. And that is Eddie Howe's biggest flaw as a manager. That's why I will not hear anybody call Eddie Howe an elite manager. He's not an elite manager. He's a good manager. He's a very good manager. He's a young manager. He's learning every single year. But he's not an elite manager. Elite managers make tough decisions and big calls, like Pep Guardiola did with Joe Hart, like Sir Alex Ferguson did when he got rid of the likes of a Jaap Stam or a Paul Ince or a David Beckham or a Roy Keane back in the day. You have to make tough calls. You have to know when to move on as a team. You have to know when to blood in new players, young players. That's something Eddie Howe's failed at as well. You go back and look at the Elliot Anderson deal, right? Elliot Anderson allowed to leave this football club. Everybody talking about PSR, to me, lets Eddie Howe and the board off the hook, right? If Eddie Howe was more ruthless, he would have looked around that squad and he would have realised we could have sold Miguel Almiron, we could have sold Sean Longstaff, we could have sold Callum Wilson, we could have sold Jamal Lascelles, we could have sold Joe Willock, we could have sold players before we sold Elliot Anderson and Yankuba Minter, who would have saved us probably 60, 80 million quid in the transfer market, because we'll let go of Minter and he's twice the player Anthony Elanga is. He is dog shit. That's £55 million down the pan, but this isn't about Elanga. I'll get to the rest of the team in a second. This is about the goalkeeper. There is no more fucking around here. There is no sentiment over sense. Nick Pope is costing us games because he's making stupid mistakes. He's coming out weak punches for balls. He's flapping. He can't kick a ball straight. Every single game, he can't kick a ball straight. That last free kick, by the way, when the commentator said Nick Pope is taking the free kick, I died inside. I died inside before his big fucking foot even hit the ball, and he couldn't even clear the first man with it. He couldn't even get it into the box, man. I could get a fucking kick into the box at the Velodrome, and I'm a fucking 43-year-old dickhead who does content online. It was pathetic from Nick Pope. He cannot kick a ball. Is he a good shot stopper? Yes. Has he been a good goalkeeper for Newcastle? Absolutely. He's been a brilliant goalkeeper for Newcastle. But football evolves, squads evolve, and you have to change things. I don't understand why you bring in Aaron Ramsdale if you don't play him in games like that last night. For me, Aaron Ramsdale has to start against Everton at the weekend, because if Nick Pope starts, which I think he will, because Eddie Howe said in the press conference that he backs Nick Pope, and it wasn't that long ago Nick Pope was shutting out Manchester City. Well, I'm sorry, Eddie, go back and watch that game, as I know you do. He didn't shut out Manchester City. Yes, he had a decent save off Holland to hit him in the chest. He didn't know much about it. It was the defence that dealt with Manchester City. It was Fabian Schär at his optimum level. It was Malik Chow at his optimum level. It was Lewis Hall and Tino Livramento back in the side. That's what shut out Manchester City. Nick Pope didn't make that many saves, in all fairness, right? So I get he wants to back his goalkeeper, but there is no more backing Nick Pope in this team. I'm sorry. He's a hindrance to this team. We've been through this before, man, with Eddie Howe. It was Sean Longstaff over Sandro Tonali all over again. It's Dan Burn at left back over Lewis Hall all over again. He does not have the luxury of sticking by Nick Pope anymore. He's making mistakes. You know, when you could just say he's a shit kicker of a ball, you know, fair enough. You can say, right, you know, pass it short to a Schär or a Botman or a Chow, and they can ping a ball 40 yards or crossfield pass or whatever, right? That was all right. But when he's shit at kicking, when he's calamitous coming off of his line, slow to react, and he's making silly errors, he's got to come out of the team as a goalkeeper. It doesn't matter what he's done for the team in the past. He will forever be remembered as part of that squad that won the Carabao Cup. Nick Pope is not going to be hated by Newcastle fans all of a sudden because he's making errors. But if you continue to play him, you'll ruin the legacy that he has at the club and the affection that the fans have for him, because they'll start to label him as a problem, not a solution. Same thing happened with Callum Wilson towards the end. People were looking at Callum Wilson, forgetting all of the goals he scored, all of the shit he pulled us out of, all of the great moments that he gave us. People are looking going, this guy can't even run 5 yards. And that's what's happening with Nick Pope right now. It's a massive decision that Eddie Howe needs to make, but he hasn't got the balls to make it, because the problem is he hangs on to these players way too long. The Bournemouth fans told us this when he came to the football club. That was his biggest flaw, his over loyalty to players. And he still thinks he's going to get the same tune out of a Nick Pope, a Kieran Trippier, a Dan Burn, a Joe Willock, all these players. I mean, Willock was better last night, right? But he's been rubbish for a while. But he thinks he's going to get the same tune out of these players that he got 3-4 years ago, and you're just not. Time has rolled by. Injuries have taken a toll. Football has evolved. Other squads have got better. These lads are not going to give you what they used to give you, Eddie. You need to give your head a shake and understand that. But Nick Pope has to come out of this team if we are going to try to qualify for the Champions League again, which I think is gone now. I think in the Premier League we're too far adrift. I think if we lose against Everton on Saturday, which is a real possibility, by the way, with no chance of getting Champions League whatsoever. In the Champions League itself, you know, we've still got a good points record there. You know, we could get enough performances to get through. There's no doubt about that. But Nick Pope cannot play anymore as the starting number one goalkeeper. It just cannot happen. It's costing his games. If you want to be an elite manager, you want to be a big time manager, make the big call, get rid of the goalkeeper, bring in Aaron Ramsdale. That is my call for that. Going back to the squad itself, weak mentality again. Weak managing of the game. It wasn't just Nick Pope, but that 5 or 10 minute of madness from Nick Pope's charge out of goal just threw the whole team off his axes. Everybody's head was on Mars, and that's why we ended up losing the game. We try to get back into it. Harvey Barnes looked sharp. Joe Willock looked better. More athleticism, more energy from Joe Willock, which was a good sign. But I don't know what was going on. He's playing Louis Miley at fucking right back, centre half. I thought he did all right when he come on, but what are you doing there? I don't understand that. Anthony Gordon is not a centre forward. Stop playing him centre forward. I see other content creators talking about Gordon playing centre forward. He's not a centre forward. He cannot finish a sentence, man. He cannot. How many chances came his way? He couldn't get his foot in the ball. He couldn't do anything with the ball. He's not a centre forward, right? We don't have another centre forward. We spent 55 million quid on one, and he blew his knee out playing in a fucking car park in pre-season when he didn't have a pre-season, and that's why we don't have another centre forward. And Will Asula's ankle's fucked, and Howe doesn't fancy him anyway. So we are fucked in the striker department. Go and buy one in January. Get a striker. Get another striker in. If you're going to sell Asula, sell him, but get a centre forward in. But do not play a left winger who's off form, who can't finish as a centre forward. It's ruining Anthony Gordon's game. He's looking worse and worse every single game he plays. Certainly when he's out of position, he cannot play there. The only bright sparks for me in the game last night was Harvey Barnes. I thought Joe Willock put in a decent shift. Malik Chow again, excellent. But everybody else really, really off it. Certainly in the second half, really, really off it. One of the worst games I've seen Bruno Guimaraes play for Newcastle. Misplaced so many passes, looked knackered, looked like he just had 6 pints and then came out to run around for 5 aside, like he was going to spew on the sideline. Sandro Tonali wasn't as impactful. He started the game well, but he faded. This is fatigue, man. The players are tired. There's too much football, Eddie. Rotate the fucking squad. You've got Jacob Ramsey, Lewis Miley. Give them game time. Rest the likes of Guimaraes and Tonali. You rested Joe Linton. Rest one of them too. You're fucking burning them out. Even big Nick Voltemada, come on. He gave more presence than Gordon, but he looks knackered as well. This squad is not big enough, despite all of the signings that we made. Some of the signings have been trash as well. Anthony Elanga, come on, and did fuck all. I'm calling it already. That guy is not a good player for Newcastle. It's a terrible signing already. You need to start thinking about when you're going to decide this is a bad signing, because I don't even think Elanga is going to turn form by the new year, and I'd be shocked if they don't try and get rid of him, certainly in the summer, because he's just not good enough. He isn't good enough. We've made a terrible decision there buying that player in a summer where we could have went for Kudus, we could have went for Semenyo, we could have went for Mbeumo, but maybe we didn't. He didn't want to come here, I don't know. Other right wingers that we could have went for, and we went for that lad. 55 million quid, waste of money. Wissa, 55 million quid, waste of money. That's 110 million pound of the 125 we got for Isak. Pissed down the sink by the looks of it. Questions need to be asked about that as well. But for me, the Marseille game wasn't the most important this week. It's disappointing that we lost, but to lose in the way we lost is really shit, because it just shows, again, a weak mentality from the lads away from home, a lack of tactics. What I saw in that game was we caught Marseille by surprise, and De Zerbi, who's a very good manager who thinks on his feet, is able to adapt in game, did exactly that. He got the lads in at half time, he fucking bollocked them, he changed the tactics, and he blasted Newcastle United and Eddie Howe's tactics completely out of the water. And Eddie Howe had no plan B and no plan C, and that is a big concern, and that is another concern when it comes to Eddie Howe. He knows one way, he sticks to one way, and that's it. There's no in-game management, there's no adaptability when things aren't going the right way. He just takes out 3 players, puts in another 3 players, and tells them to play exactly the same way, and that doesn't work. De Zerbi showed you what an innovative manager who thinks on his feet is capable of doing last night. That's what we want from Eddie Howe more. That will make Eddie Howe an elite manager. Making big decisions like dropping your goalkeeper when he's playing shit and costing you games. That's what elite managers do. Be an elite manager, Eddie Howe. Loads of people think you are. Be an elite manager. I'm not saying I want him out before anyone starts jumping him in the comments, but he needs to improve. It needs to improve quick. Starting on the weekend against Everton, and I'm really worried about. I'll be back with a match preview for that. Keep it evermore in the meantime, guys. Like and subscribe. Thanks for the support of the channel. Remember, we're close to 12,000. Get us there as quick as you can. There's merch links below. Be a member if you want to be a member. Once we get to 12,000, I'm going to do the prize draw. I've got a great prize draw for you, which I'm sure you'd love to win in time for Christmas. But my God, get off my chest. I feel better. Let me know what you think in the comments. Always like to hear from you, and we'll be back soon. Cheers.
Yes, those heroes celebrate. They have done it.